Ooh, that's a creepy stare, wasn't it? And that's yeah, yours too. Welcome everyone to 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. As always, my name is Matt.
And I'm Dan the Movie Man.
Hey Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Mr. Matt. Getting kind of freaked out by our background image here. Got pairs of eyes staring at us. What are we reviewing today?
We are talking about the 1991 film The Silence of the Lambs. Ooh. This is one of my all-time favorite movies, so I'm excited to talk about this today. As you know, or as you may not know, in case you're just joining us for the first time, we are going through the 1001 movies you must see before you die, the 2021 edition by Stephen J. Schneider, updated by Ian Hayden Smith. It is available now on Amazon.com or wherever you get your books. We are not sponsored by them. We just offer where you can find it in case you care to follow along.
Yeah, hopefully if they ever get a sale on a book, maybe give us like a reference.
Yeah. Yeah, like leave a comment, leave an Amazon comment. Came here from the 1000 or Matt Knows Movies guys. So we've been going through this journey, Dan. We are now episode 11 in, our 11th movie rather in. How you feeling so far about this?
I mean, it's amazing that we can sit here and just be, over a percent of the movies. So, I mean, we are making progress. It's going a lot faster at this point. I know for you guys, it doesn't seem that way, but we're doing maybe like 3, 4 episodes in a week at times, whereas this week was a little bit slower. I know Matt had some big news in his personal life outside of this that he's been moving around the continental United
Country.
States and all
Been
that
moving
good
around the
stuff.
country, yes.
So definitely a lot going on in our lives, but I'm glad that we can kind of get back in the flow and get back into this, and excited to see what the next movie brings after this, and really excited to talk about it. But how about you, Mr. Matt?
I like you say, I'm glad to be here. I'm having fun each and every time we do this. It does seem like we're plowing through it, even though we're only our 11th film. Um, I'm just excited to see where we go next. So, as mentioned, we are, of course, talking about The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. It is directed by Jonathan Demme. And the synopsis, real quick Clarice Starling is a top student at the FBI's training academy. Jack Crawford wants Clarice to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist who is also a violent psychopath, serving life behind bars for various acts of murder and cannibalism. Crawford believes that Lecter may have insight into a case and that Starling, an attractive young woman, may be just the bait to draw him out. Dan, initial thoughts. I'm going to kick it over to you, sir. What
It's
did you
been a
think of
while.
Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched this film. Little backstory on me: before I got into where I am now in the wonderful world of retail, I had a dream. I wanted to go into the police department, and I got to learn a lot about, like in college courses, a lot about serial killers and that sort of thing. And for some reason, I always found that interesting. I've always enjoyed watching the true crime podcasts and a lot of the other YouTubers out there that review stories about serial killers or things of that nature. And I got to tell you, man, when you cue this thing up, Anthony Hopkins, he's only in what I think he said 21% of this entire movie, but he is all over this thing. And when you first are introduced with his character, he is freaky and definitely unnerving. And he was in theater. He was also on TV and movies well before this role. Apparently, this is where he really blew up in the world of film, at least. I think theatrically, he was already really popular, renowned. So I think he earned every bit of this. Like, for me in this story, in this movie, his acting is really the standout. I did really enjoy Jodie Foster, but I feel that Hannibal Lecter, like this is all him. It just oozes fear and dread and everything that you'd associate with a serial killer. And really, for most of the movie, he's locked up, and you still get the heebie-jeebies. Like, you really don't want to be around this guy. And I think they did a really good job of introducing other aspects from real life serial killers and giving it to the character Wild Bill as well. Again, just a movie with a few serial killers into it, and each with their own MOs and different backgrounds they build upon. And you feel for the victim. I think that's something that's left aside in a lot of movies. Like, you see the dead bodies piling up, but you never really see the perspective of the folks that are getting picked up or kidnapped. And this makes it a harder watch, but definitely makes you identify more with those characters and feel what they're going through and the emotions and the rides. But to start off in the review, before I kick it back over to you for initial thoughts, it's a joyride, and it just takes you to places maybe you don't necessarily want to go at times. So, what about you, Matt? Where are you at on this?
So, as mentioned, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. I don't know exactly where I rank it. I'd say probably definitely in the top 10. I'd say probably top 5. If it's not, it's right there, like number 6. um, I took away a lot this viewing, and things that I had noticed before, but had kind of forgotten. So I don't want to say I learned things this time, but rather I remembered things such as Hannibal's locked up in Baltimore, and they show an outside shot of the prison, and it just made me think, as some Maryland guys, uh, I wonder if this was shot somewhere. Like, can I go see the film location? Can I go see that where they shot that? The outside. Um, I know the house, the famous Wild Bill house, is in Pennsylvania, and they actually offer. They've actually redone it. Someone bought it and redid it, and you can actually stay there now or take tours and stuff. And that's pretty cool. Um, but no, I agree with you as far as Anthony Hopkins being, he's just uh, for a 2-hour runtime, he appears just a little more than 16 minutes. Yet during those minutes, he doesn't. You think about him all the time. Like, so when it's kind of like I said. I don't remember if I said it during recording or after recording last episode, but I said it's kind of like the Beetlejuice or Jaws effect, right? So like you think he's the reason you're watching the movie, right? But realistically, he's hardly in the movie. Um, and his performance is Oscar worthy. I believe he won an Oscar, or at least was nominated. I think I should have looked this up beforehand. I think he was at least.
He was the winner in that category.
Okay, I was gonna say he should have been if he was not. But yeah, so he won an Oscar. It's just, but here's the thing, and you said you enjoyed Jodie Foster's performance, um, and obviously Hopkins is the star here. But I gotta tell you, I think this is this is a revelation that I had this time that I hadn't had any other time. I think I have secretly, to myself, been in love with Jodie Foster my whole life since I've seen this movie. I just Every film she's ever been in, I love her. I just love watching her, and I think this is where it started. That innocent detective, that young, beautiful woman that's gets caught up in this world of cannibalism and Lecter's mind games, and what makes this movie for me is the connection between Hannibal and Clarice. Um, I don't think ever before has there been such a must see connection between a male and a female character that wasn't sexual. Um, that's my initial thoughts before I get into too much more.
Speaking on the relationship between uh, the detective and her serial killer counterpart, it is very interesting to me how the relationship, if you can call it that, develops. To me, it's more manipulation, but obviously, we have um, Anthony Hopkins' character gets a rise out of Clarice being involved with him. So, um, Lecter definitely uses her to his advantage. And I mean, let's be honest, he kind of spells it out. It's like, if you want help with this, like, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. It's quid pro quo. And she's like, what do you mean? And it gets into this, like, well, I'm going to help you catch the killer. And he really does. He puts it all out in front of her. He doesn't just say, hey, what's the name? She has to put the clues together. And she is very quick for what he gives him, or he gives her, but it was something that she wouldn't have been able to do right out of the gate herself. And it is interesting that they pull a FBI trainee, and again, just for the reason that she is young and pretty and female, and they put her in with Lecter to, kind of coax this information out of him. Initially, they wanted his input on a standardized like psych test, kind of see what questions that he would, I guess, see on a test or not see on a test, and goes way beyond that. And the fact that he had all the information on this serial killer, and then you and I were talking before the show, he had information on serial killer in the past, and then there's another movie that's where he's out in the world doing what he does, and it's just how this character is so infused or imbued or the embodiment of evil that pretty much everybody he's come in contact with that he's let live is also an embodiment of some type of evil themselves. And it's interesting that Clarice would be the counter to that, or you would say that she's the counter to that. There is some kind of magnetism, or is it fear, or is it awe? It's kind of left up to the viewer to decide where that relationship is coming from. And the fact that he even calls her at the end after the serial killer is caught and he congratulates her. It's Yeah, it's almost like in some ways is that he's following her career, but at the same time he built her career, that he's like taunting her, but at the same time celebrating her. It's just a very interesting dynamic and really plays with your mind there. So, but
Yeah, there's a
I'm sorry.
line that says,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say there's a line even in the movie where after spoilers, after he escapes the prison, uh she's telling someone that he won't come after her because uh he respects her too much, or I forget what the exact line is, but that would be below him essentially to chase after her.
Well,
Um
even in the beginning of the movie, before they started to form their bond, where he kills the other inmate that threw,
yes.
bodily fluids at her, he took that as a slight against him as well. It's almost like he's adopted her as part of him, and as such protects that part, maybe a more innocent part. And I'm sure that's what they've explored in other movies, like his connections in the past and things of that nature. But um, definitely one where it's interesting that, again, as a personification of evil, that he has got some sort of himself that's, I don't know, looking for a human connection at the same way. Like he wants someone to be at his level to kind of go, tick for tat with him. He's trying to find somebody that'll rise to his level, and then he finds it in her, an up and coming FBI agent, which, it's interesting to explore.
Before we continue and wrap up, we are actually going to move into the part of the show where we give you some insight with some stats or facts or interesting trivial things. So, Mr. Dan, the movie man, what do we have for stats about this movie? What are the deets?
It's so strange because we've been talking about a lot of movies where the budget hasn't been huge because it's either independent or it's decades ago. And then the gross doesn't seem that impressive in today's terms, but today I think is one of the big ones for our time or closer to our time. We're talking about a movie that was released, like you said, in February 18th, 1991. The budget was an estimated $19 million. It did 13 million back of that in an opening weekend in the U.S. and Canada, grossing in the U.S. and Canada 130 million, grossing worldwide 272 million dollars. I mean, you gotta say that this movie is, as you said, it's one of your favorite films. A lot of folks would put this as one of their top favorite films list, and the popularity still strong today. I mean, you could go out anywhere and see a reference to Hannibal or hear about Hannibal. You know exactly who they're talking about. It's a movie that you'd have to be living under a rock not to know about, basically. And one of the reasons why this is
How
so
many? Yeah,
popular.
just how many times have do people quote the fava beans and a nice Chianti?
Even though they might
How many times do you hear that?
misquote it at times, but they do
Yes,
know what
yes.
you're talking about, for sure. And with this, I got to give a lot of credit again to Anthony Hopkins, who's no stranger to acting. He comes into this and he does extensive research into all of his roles. For this one, he's talking to folks that have committed murder. Like he goes to the prisons and talks to them. He sits in on court trials of heinous people who have done heinous things, heinous deeds. It's crazy the lengths that he went to put himself in this mindset. And he says that one of the things, like when you see the poster image of him and he's in the front screen, or no matter what image you see of him, he is staring deadlocked at you. Doesn't matter where you are in the room, like he's right on top of you with that stare. And he said that he got this from his one of the friends, or a friend that he had in London, who would always make you feel uncomfortable. He wouldn't blink. He just had that and he adopted that. And when you were talking about Baltimore, I mean, a lot of folks go into the makeup and the costumes, and they wanted to make you feel like it was in Baltimore. They're talking about the jumpsuits, what colors they should be. And Anthony Hopkins insisted that when he was shown in the cell that he would be wearing white because he felt it was more clinical, it was more clean cut, and it would give you more of a sense of dread. And he took that because of his real life fear of dentists. He does not like dentists, apparently, and figured that he would kind of embody that in the film. So, a little ode to him and his personal life. And one of the scenes where in the beginning, when he first meets Clarice and he's talking to her from the cell, he makes fun of her accent. He did that completely off script. He just kind of threw that in there. And when she reacted to that, it was apparently genuine. He kind of hurt her feelings talking about her accent. And it's funny that that was kept in and made it feel more real on that level of it. Um, but he's a brilliant actor. He brings a lot to the table. And again, there's a lot of method actors out here today. Anthony Hopkins reigns supreme, still to this day among them all. So definitely interested to hear. And I think I already know the answer. I think most of our viewers probably already know the answer, considering it's one of your top films. But I mean, Matt, is this a film that you feel should be one that you watch before you die?
Um, yes, absolutely. This is a film you must see before you die. I don't care, even if you don't like this genre. I don't think you walk away from this, and I might be wrong, but I don't think you walk away from this saying, "Oh, that was garbage," or "Oh, that was a waste of my time." Like, I think you take something from it, even if it's just, "Oh, I didn't like that," because of the way it made you feel, or the story itself. It stays with you long after the credits roll. Um, it's not a very violent, it's such a violent movie, but it's not a very violent movie. The absence of gore and blood, um, is it relies on rather those things than it relies on the story and the acting and the writing. Um, and I think it's superior because of that. Um, and it's a psychological terror, and I think the psychological part is what makes this film such a success. Um, Hopkins, we can only praise him. We could do that all night. His performance really makes you fully aware that he is one of the best of all time. And uh, they did sequels. They did a sequel. They did a prequel. I wish so much that Jodie Foster would have returned for the sequel. Nothing against Julianne Moore, but I just think that, I think that's what everyone wants. Even now, like as recently as 2016, and I have a picture here, they reunited uh, for a photo shoot because on one of the anniversaries, which speaking of anniversary, you said, Dan, that this movie came out February 18th, 1991. Um, by the time this episode airs, that will have already passed, but this movie just is celebrating its 33rd anniversary this year, which is crazy. We're coming up on that as we're recording. It's almost that date. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, get a nice Chianti and enjoy this movie. It is one you should see before you die, 100%.
I think it's kind of interesting because, again, talking about the anniversary, we did one of those little books that tells you what was the top song, what was the top, um, album out at the time of your birth. Apparently, this one was the top movie that was out and about, still being viewed when I was born. So, kind of interesting. So yeah, if you want to know how old I am, just look at the year this was released and what Matt just said, and you'll know the answer. But overall, outside of Anthony Hopkins, because I feel like you're right, I did kind of harp on him quite a bit. The story to me, I thought was very interesting, and again, was it said that life often imitates art. I think that's also very true the other way. The art imitates life. There were elements that were taken out of a lot of real world situations, and again, serial killer cases, and the fact that Wild Bill had his arm in a sling, and when he was abducting the girl, or how they would toy around with the authorities, or um, just a lot of things in this movie that they had thought of and put in that were odes to actual serial killers. It's and also the fact that they were going to a serial killer for advice on how to catch other serial killers. This isn't something that's uncommon. I believe that um, Clarice was going to be assigned or wanted to be assigned to the behavioral unit. So they are the ones that would probably do the profiles on serial killers, trying to build the backgrounds. How old do we think this person is? What do we think their life is like? Do we think they're from a wealthy income, low income? What's their IQ level and things of that nature? And the fact that they had a test that they're trying to get him to answer or get his theories or feedback on, that was actually done in real life too by an actual serial killer, and probably more than just the one I know about. But uh, it's sad that it's a part of reality for us that things like that could actually happen. But I think, like you said, one of the things a movie does, it doesn't necessarily take you to a place that you feel good all the time. And they could have easily ended this movie where that young lady wasn't found. I mean, there were several that weren't found in time, that were his victims or even Hannibal Lecter's victims. So, with this movie, do I think it's a movie you should see before you die? I mean, absolutely. We've seen a couple different sides of the spectrum. We've seen campy, we've seen comedy. I think this is the first in-depth, like super horror film. Not that it could be just called a horror film, but horror film slash thriller, suspense that we've seen, and it hits the mark. Great acting, great director. Everybody involved in this, strong performances, down to the people that were murdered in this, or came through. But it keeps you engaged all the way through the movie. It leaves you with a cliffhanger at the end that made you probably want to go see the sequel when it came out and see how it played out between Clarice and Anthony Hopkins. Do I
I
agree with?
remember I
Yeah.
remember when the trailer for the sequel first started showing. I remember it being in a theater, and I hadn't seen Silence. I was too young. I hadn't seen Silence of the Lambs. I was with my mom watching something, and the trailer for Hannibal came out, and I remember I was like glued to the screen. I have to, like, what is this? And I remember my mom being like, "Oh, they're making an oh, they didn't bring back Jodie Foster. Oh my god, what is this?" And I asked my mom, like, "What is this movie? This looks great." And she's like, "Well, it's called Hannibal, and it's the sequel to Silence of the Lambs." And I don't know how old I was. I wasn't very old, but because I was so excited about Hannibal, she actually I don't advise this, but I probably wasn't any older than 10. Might have been might have been younger. She let me go back and watch Silence of the Lambs at however young I was, so that way I could watch Hannibal when it came out. Um, so and Hannibal was not as good, but it's, they're all, Red Dragon, Hannibal, Silence, they're all decent films. I don't think there's really a bad one, but Silence of the Lambs just stands so far above that. I didn't mean to totally steal your finishing thoughts, but
No, you're a-okay. I think I was just about to wrap it up. But really glad we got to watch this week, and I guess kind of to steer the boat a little bit in our continuing
well,
direction. Looks like you're about to say something.
yes, no, before you steer, it just popped in my mind one other thing that this movie did that wasn't as common. I mean, nowadays I mean, it's almost second nature, whether you agree or disagree. But one thing this movie touched on and dealt with was, the LGBTQ community. Before there was a LGBTQ, we had Buffalo Bill, who was transgender or was trying to be. He was, homosexual and dealing with, wanting to become a woman. And there's that famous scene where he's dancing, and we all know it if we've seen it. And so it's just, I think in so many ways this movie is so great and ahead of its time, and that's why it still stands the test of time, and that's why you can watch it today in 2024 and it's just as great as it was in 1991. Now you can steer the ship, Dan. Sorry.
Definitely as disturbing as it was back then. I mean, anybody that's kidnapping people to make a human suit, just definitely ick. Yeah, I feel like we didn't really talk too much about Wild Bill in this episode. He probably
We
deserved a
didn't.
little
And
bit.
Ted Levine, or Ted Levine, however he says his last name. I'll put this pen down.
I think it looked better. Just keep the pen. We can just play
Okay.
with it. I have a
Yeah,
pencil.
I look smarter. He fantastic actor. I've seen him in so many things since this, but every time I see him, he's Wild Bill. Like, there's just nothing. He's always going to be the serial killer from Silence of the Lambs.
I guess I
But
haven't
yes,
really followed his career. Is he typecasted after this at all? Or
no, not really. He usually plays either the opposite. He's usually a cop or some sort of just like redneck or bully, or he's not really like a killer like he was in this. But he for sure. Every time I see him, I think this movie, and I think he for sure gives a fantastic, phenomenal performance.
I guess Matt, it's getting to that point in our show where we typically end up trying to figure out what are we watching next in the world of 1,001 movies you must see before you die.
So, if you are familiar with us, you know that we typically uh, have been spinning the wheel. So we are still doing that method. We just aren't doing it any longer on screen, on camera, because it's causing a lag. I don't know if it's the internet connection or just the programs that we're using too much happening at once, or if it's the wheel itself because it's got 990 some movies in it. But we have decided not to do it on camera, but rather do it off camera until we figure out another solution. So we have already spun the wheel. We did it right before we hit record. So Dan and I both know what film we will be talking about next. And Dan, that is 1984's The Color Purple, directed by perhaps one of the all-time greats, Steven Spielberg. So what do you know about this movie?
I mean, but I know what you're telling me. It's going to be the first time that I'm watching it. I know that it's held in very high regard and esteem in the movie community across many different levels. And it's the first Steven Spielberg film that we're going to be getting into on our list, which I feel like there's probably going to be more than just one, considering how much of an impact he's made. Actually, I guess I take that back. I know that Jurassic Park is in here.
Yes.
So we have featured that on an episode before. I believe it was our it was after MDVA Movie Club. So
yeah, when we were Picture This.
Picture This.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, it is part of the 1001 films as well. But yeah, Color Purple. It is on page 719 of the 1001 movie book, if you are following along with us. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up this show. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe. If you like what you're seeing, if you don't like what you're seeing, let us know what we can do different. If you're following along with us and there's a movie that you can't wait for us to get to, leave us a comment. Let us know, and maybe we'll jump ahead rather than spinning the wheel. We'll just pick your movie. And make sure you ring the notification bell so that way you get notified every time we post videos. You know, we're doing this on Fridays, but as mentioned before, we're going to start doing more than once a week here soon. So make sure you get notified so you don't miss an episode. Dan, any final words, sir?
Just keep turning those pages and following that movie trail, and let us know if there's a movie you've come across too that you think should be on the 1001 movies you must see before you die. Maybe that could be another part of our segment. If we have folks that want to bring in contender that thinks it's better than one of the ones that we featured or one of the ones we picked, maybe we could do like a heavyweight title championship. We watch their suggestion and we knock one off. So if you think that you have a movie that's better than one that we've already featured that you've seen is not in the book, bring it to our attention. We'll put our thoughts onto it, see if it weighs better than one of these guys, and we'll go from there as well.
Sort of like we did with Wonka. We kind of kicked off Blue Velvet and added Wonka.
Yes, Blue Velvet. If you guys are following with us, it's not on our personal list of 1001 movies you must see before you die. So we will, I guess at the end of this, we're going to have to, if we get any bumped off other than just, I guess it's been two
we've
this
done
point.
2, yeah.
So we're going to have to fill in those slots at some point.
And whatever number we come up with, we'll do a spin-off series called Matt and Dan's 10 extra movies you must see before you die.
There you go. That sounds like a plan. Sounds fun.
Well, one thing's for sure, we'll be here all year and all next year.
And next year.
The next year. But so you don't miss us. Make sure thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for subscribing. Our new subscribers, welcome. We thank you. And we will catch you on the next one.
Yep. Thank you, guys.